Well, being I want to be conscientious of everybody's time, it is a couple of minutes after 9. So why don't we get started? So good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us for today's esports webinar. This is just a reminder that today's session will be recorded and we'll be making it available to everybody who registered afterwards. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jerry and James for today's presentation.
Good morning. I'm going to start it off here. I'm going to share my screen. And let's go from the beginning. Okay, hopefully everybody can see that and can hear me. Good morning and welcome to Video Games in the Classroom, ? And this is the middle school session. And this is the second of a 3-part webinar series aimed at providing teachers and administrators with an overview of the esports phenomena and the opportunity that we and others see for school and student engagement. I'd like to thank Tim Taylor and Corey Pelk from the Small School District Association for hosting this webinar and giving us the opportunity to evangelize. I'd also like to extend a thank you to our friends and partners at the North American Scholastic Esports Federation, that's NASEF. They are the umbrella organization that James and I live under. And lastly, I'd like to say a thank you to the folks at the Butte County Office of Education, led by Superintendent Mary Sakuma, for their leadership and support of esports and the Northern California Esports League. Let's see here. Here's an overview of what we intend to cover today. I'll provide a short review of what we talked about in our first session, the highlights essentially. And then James will take a deep dive into the NCEL-Middle School League, his work as a NASEF Scholastic Fellow, and then finish with how you can get a middle school esports movement started within your district or within your campus. And then I'll jump back in at the close where James and I will both provide some anecdotal accounts of the impacts we've seen firsthand by introducing this valuable learning tool to schools and students. I'll make a little mention of our next session aimed at high school teachers and school leaders, and then we'll have a segment at the end where we can take on any questions that you might have. Encourage you to use the chat box or the dialogue box to kind of prime the pump there. Okay, some introductions. I'm Jerry Hight. I serve as the ringleader for the Northern California Esports League, the NCEL, headquartered out of the Butte County Office of Education in Oroville, California. I do a broad array of other tasks for BCOE, but the slice of my position that I get devoted to esports is by far and away the favorite because I've seen the transformational impact it holds on kids. I've spent the majority of my career as a liaison between industry and education, and I'm really jazzed about the job creation horsepower that's prevalent in esports immersion. James Wood has been my partner in crime on the esport journey. His school, Achieve Charter High School, formed the very first NCEL team. The team and school sadly lost in the campfire. James has enthusiastically and strategically taken on the leadership of the Middle School League and serves as its commissioner. His background in teaching a broad array of STEM-related subjects and his personal passion for esports and gaming provide him with the ideal combination of skill and enthusiasm to lead that effort. In short, James connects with students of all ages and has been a valuable asset in evangelizing to counterpart teachers and school leaders about the transformative impacts that esports holds. Okay, what is esports? Simply put, esports or electronic sports is a form of competition that is facilitated through computer gaming. Most commonly, esports takes on the form of organized multiplayer video game competitions. Whoops. You have to forgive me, I'm using my phone to read my notes. These are some of the titles most commonly found on the marketplace. We've made use of League of Legends, Overwatch. The Middle School League has made use of Mario Kart, Super Smash Brothers, and Rocket League for their tournaments and leagues. So there's just a broad array of options and game titles and platforms for student engagement. Okay, another passing fad. Okay, so esports, so what? Are they another big thing, another fad that will be gone shortly? Well, it doesn't look so in terms of the global viewership. It's nearly doubled in 4 short years, from 270 million viewers in 2016 to 495 million viewers this year. The American public is likewise enamored with esports, as this year viewership for esports events will exceed that achieved by major mainstream sports like baseball, basketball, hockey, with only football drawing more viewers than esports. And this analysis from Statista looks at the esports participant population by age, pointing out that 21%, or 19.75 million, are under the age of 18. That number, many analysts feel, is underestimated in that it doesn't account for the pervasive gameplay that occurs in pre-teen populations, down to the age of 10. These numbers support our central theme today, that esports play and viewership is rabid amongst school-age children, and as such constitutes a compelling entry point for teaching and learning. Colleges and universities don't see esports as a passing fad, as there are now over 170 schools who provide esports scholarships with a total support for student athletes in the sport totaling more than $16 million annually. Academics and thought leaders, likewise, who run colleges and universities, feel the same way, as there are now degree programs of study specific to esports, each aiming to professionalize and advance the body of knowledge pertinent to the sport. See some prominent institutions like Ohio State in there, UC campus, UC Irvine, University of Texas. And the investment in business world doesn't see esports as a passing fad. With viewership and participation numbers in the millions, the opportunity to generate revenue from multiple sources is exceedingly attractive to those looking to the future for wealth generation opportunities. And if the job market is any indicator, esports is definitely more than just a fad. This graph depicts a near doubling of jobs between 2018 and 2019 in the esports industry sector, with just under 2,500 jobs posted in 2018, rising to over 4,600 jobs in 2019. Today's look at the esports only job website Hitmarker, which from this graph is derived, sees 6,355 posts today, with more than 60% of those job postings in California. I'll note that the COVID pandemic has had little impact on esports hiring, and it is one sector that is largely isolated from COVID impacts. Esports are good for kids. Okay, maybe they're not going away anytime soon, but how can they be good for kids? Where's the evidence of that? Well, Green and Bellier says that video games and learning improve visual acuity and attention. Steinkuhler and her team down at UCI say it fosters scientific reasoning. All of these PhD research studies you can find online. You can take these notes and take a deeper dive on any of these. Accelerates language learning, and that translates to more than just English language. It improves digital and print literacy, increases problem solving, and associated with higher math achievement, and strongly associated with STEM fluency. Let's see, what else did I want to say here? Okay, and esports are sports. They capture the same benefits of team as experienced in any other traditional sport. And this is what the research says about sports and learning, that it's associated with higher GPAs for high school students. It fosters personal growth, increases satisfaction with school, and associated with higher degree completion, and cultivates persistence. We've seen all of these things firsthand, both at the middle school level and then at the high school level, where we've spent the last 3 years cultivating this effort. And then our friend Kat Salazar, who's the lead researcher and CEO at WeThink, has found evidence that esports and gameplay are beneficial to a myriad of job skills, from those that are generalized as soft skills to those that are highly specialized, like medical surgery and flying an airplane. Esports play has served as a career accelerant in her course of study. So to summarize, there's abundant and compelling research that points to esports and video gaming as being good for kids, plain and simple. And they love it. Students of all cliques, groups, subgroups, etc. are gamers. Student interest is passionate and pervasive. Okay, I'm going to get off my stump now and hand the Zoom reins over to James to take us on a deep dive of the middle school landscape and how esports fits. So take it away, James. Let me stop sharing here.
No worries. I'll just hijack that from you. That's not a problem. So real quick, I want to briefly reintroduce myself. I'm a teacher for Achieve Charter School. Our executive director is on the call. Thank you again for all of your support for the esports endeavors. I am the middle school esports commissioner for the NCEL, and last year I was one of NASIF's middle school scholastic fellows. I will introduce them and myself a little bit more later on. So first I want to talk a little bit about what it was like for us to form our NCEL's middle school league. I want to talk a little bit about actual curriculum that's available for your schools, free of charge through NASIF, and some that even I've helped design, and one of my projects is featured there. And then how do you get started in the fall? Like, what are the next steps? That's the question that I get the most often is, what do we do? So for me, esports has always been about meeting kids right where they're at. One of their passions is video games. And if you've ever had to listen in on any of your kids or children around you having a conversation about video games they're playing, it's like they're speaking another language. They have so much knowledge about something, and it's something that they're so passionate about that it seems negligent to not try to tap into that passion and channel it into an interest in school. Looking at some of the statistics that are out there, there's about 49% of adults and 97% of teens that they found to play games. And when you think about something that 97% of the teenage population is interested in, then it is something that you won't get that amount of people interested in any traditional sport. So one of the problems that we had when we first started this is we wanted to play video games. We wanted to have an esports league, but there was nobody for us to play. There was no real middle school esports league. There were a few teams on the East Coast run by Chris Aviles out of New Jersey, but there were no active leagues in the Western United States. There were nobody within our time zone. And so what Jerry and I talked about doing last year was we formed the NCEL's Middle School Esports League. So last year we had 5 middle schools out of Northern California. There were 2 schools from Orville, ours from Chico, Magnolia Intermediate out of Grass Valley, and then another charter school out of Chico. And we also had a couple of schools from other states, as well as what Jerry mentioned, there was a team from Canada that was interested in participating and played a round or 2 with us. So we also hosted what is quite possibly the very first middle school esports invitational, and I'll talk about that in a minute. We had to overcome quite a few challenges to get this rolling. We had to cover issues of student privacy, given that we're working with 6th to 8th grade students. We had to deal with the technical aspect of getting it set up, how to deal with equipment costs. Again, I'll dive more into that later. And again, the lack of structure. There was nobody for our teams to compete against. Like, even if we had kids that wanted to do this, and I had 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th graders clamoring, hey, when do we get to start esports? We heard you were doing it with the high school kids. When do we get to do this? This sort of culminated in our first invitational event with these 5 teams, where we were hosting it at one of the schools. This is actually a classroom in Orville that was hosting this, and they hosted this with material. They got all of this on grant funding, and their setup is very, very snazzy. And we had about 50 kids and their parents. If you look at some of these pictures over here, these are not just young kids in the area. A lot of their parents were actually over there watching them compete and cheering them on. And it was such a strange experience for some of these kids to have their parents cheering them on playing video games, and they just loved it. We have a picture of our winners here, which was fun. And these kids just ate it up. They loved it. They had a blast. And of course, we had to all sit outside for a group picture, but this is quite possibly the first middle school esports event in the country, because I have looked around afterward and haven't heard of a single one of these. So we had the interest here, and the question that a lot of administrators and staff ask is, well, how do you tie this into a classroom? How do you actually make a class or a club focused on something relating to esports? And so what a lot of the Scholastic Fellows have developed, and this was a lot developed last year, and it's an ongoing process, is we've looked at these different domains within the esports industry, and we've tied courses to a lot of different standards. There's next gen science standards, there's ISTE. We're in California, so of course we want to match the California Common Core state standards. But there is also the social emotional learning component, which is a huge part of these courses. Is you're teaching kids a lot about regulating their behavior, helping them manage their temper. A lot of people hear kids playing video games and picture the kids screaming at the screen or throwing a controller at the wall or some other sort of overreaction. And so a lot of what we want to teach kids is being aware and managing their own behaviors and how do their behaviors affect their gameplay. So that's part of it. So last year there was a group of 25 of us, 24, 25 of us from all over the country, and we worked to develop esports curriculum with the help of NCEL. So this is sort of where everybody is. The dark orange is for middle school and the lighter orange is for high school Scholastic Fellows. I hope I don't get that. Yeah, orange is Scholastic Fellows that are middle school. So there were middle schools, high schools all over the country that were forming this curriculum. And so there are high school options. So there is an A through G approved English language arts curriculum that they can actually take a college preparatory class that is esports themed, and that has 4 different classes, 9th through 12th grade. And there's also all of these courses that were created by the NCEL Fellows. We developed and piloted these last year, and we're actively working on updating and fostering those this year. I've applied to work as a mentor to actually mentor new teachers that are doing this. And there's options for everything from elementary to middle school to high school. And you can cover everything. My class was focused on career exploration because I wanted to talk about different careers within the esports industry. But there's also elements of CTE, English language arts, game design, of course, is a pretty easy one to hit. And so the other thing that we want to talk about is how do you actually get started with this? What do you as a school do as you say, hey, okay, this seems cool. I'm interested in this. What next? What are we going to do? And the biggest hurdle for any teacher trying to start this is, well, where are we going to get the money for this? How much does it cost to start a esports team or an esports league? And what we've sort of put together, and the NCEL knows a few of these things, and the way that our leagues are run is we want to try to make this as accessible and as inexpensive as possible. There are ways to do this on school devices. If your school happens to have a computer lab that is used for any sort of graphic design program, any computer that can run Adobe Photoshop, Premiere, or any of those graphical design programs can be very easily adapted to run pretty much any of the video games that most esports leagues are doing. I was working with a school that wanted to actually adapt that, and so they just talked to their graphics class teacher, and they said, well, yeah, these computers aren't being used after hours. Let's use them for an esports team. The other option to do, and this is one that we sort of started last year with some of our teams, is the option for kids to bring, or in the case of COVID, to use their own devices. So if you get this set up properly with your IT department, the kids can bring their device, get it online at the school, and again, assuming in-person instruction, they can bring consoles and compete at school, and there can be 3 kids on one console. So you can have one kid bring a console, field an entire esports team off of it. I've actually run events where kids bring their own consoles when I was running an esports or a gaming club at a high school. And I said, hey, anybody have a console? We need 3 or 4. And I had 12 of them show up that Saturday for console for days. And it's a little bit to set up, but it's not that bad. The nice thing about the era of COVID and its impact on esports is a lot of these kids have these consoles at home and they have the ability to play these online. So there's no real additional tech that you need to send out or get going. So this is a zero cost option for schools. One of the main games that the middle school league is playing is called Rocket League. They announced that it was going free to play sometime this month. And so it's a little bit different than the super steep cost of $20 that it used to be. So Another option, and we had a couple of schools that did this, is they actually bought their own gaming console for their school. One of the pictures that was there, I don't think it showed up, had a Nintendo Switch they were using for games. That school bought it, and you know, most of you or some of you may have even bought gaming consoles for your own kids. And you know that you can get a console, a game, and a bunch of controllers for under $500. And I can't imagine many other athletic or sports endeavors that have that low of a barrier to entry. There's very few. Again, I haven't done a lot of those, but I can't imagine that between gear and fields or coaches or whatever, that it's going to be any less expensive or any more expensive. So the other thing that people ask about is, how do I actually teach my kids how to do this? And honestly, you probably don't really have to. A lot of the coaches and the teachers' role in it is sort of general managing. They're responsible for liaisoning with other schools, talking with their teachers about setting up the matches, because to be perfectly honest, these kids are better at video games than most of us, all of us. Let's be fair. I'm probably one of the few teachers that will, you know, play games against the kids, and we had a little bit of an exhibition match, and that was fun, where the teacher got to hop on one of the games, and I really enjoyed that last year. So there's a lot of resources available online for how to teach the basics of some of these games. There's tutorials built into the games, and it is one of the skills that you can actually learn from a video. It's a lot harder to learn some of these, some of the more traditional skills from watching a video and not being in person or having somebody professional teach you how to do it. Thankfully, there's this wonderful platform called YouTube and another one called Twitch, where you have hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of people who are way better at this game than you or I will ever be, who make videos and teach people how to do it and walk through online. There's recorded high-level competitions for all these games where they can watch the techniques and learn how to do it. There's a lot of professional gamers who will put out little tutorial videos for kids. And we've kind of got some of those already aggregated for you, but a lot of the kids will say, oh yeah, that game that we play, there's a streamer that I know that does really good videos on it. And another thing is that you can host online practices and even competitions at a distance. And giving kids something to latch onto, especially nowadays, can have really positive impacts. As far as where to go to do that and talk to that, again, you'll get all of our contact info later on. Working with the NCEL through myself or Jerry Hight to actually get on board and talking with this. All of our contact info will be posted again later. And there's also some other league opportunities within the middle school division. And there is the NCEL, which is one of, if not the only middle school in the Western League in the Western United States. And also a group of teachers and myself have worked to form what we're calling the Western Middle School Esports Conference. And so there's a few other teachers and I, specifically Dr. Miles Harvey out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. And he and I and a couple of other teachers are working to put all of these schools into one large umbrella. We want to put together resources and competitions and even maybe have like a Western Regional Championship for pretty much any school that's in the Western 2 time zones. So that being said, that's about all I have for you guys on this. We have more information here if you need the contact from us. Jerry, do you want to take over this? Because I know you still have a few more to cover here. You are muted at the moment. I don't know if you know.
Sorry about that. I was having technical difficulties finding the mute button. It switched from the bottom to the top. Okay, I just want to close with why should school leaders care, and I want James to chime in here too. Again, you know, to reiterate that student interest is pervasive and passionate. You're You're not going to find anything on your campuses that generates this pervasive interest across all segments of your student population. And again, esports meets students where they're at: blind, ethnicity, disability, socioeconomic status, gender, or even physical appearance, or again, disability. I want to make a couple of mentions for school leaders. You know, it's good for the district and school bottom line. We've experienced dramatic attendance accelerations, ADA captures. We've also seen testing and student performance increases, plain and simply because kids are in their classrooms more often. They're in front of their teachers more often because they want to play esports. They want to be part of what's happening on their esports team. And then, you know, it's about students first. It's inclusion. It meets their interest. It inspires them to improve, and it inspires them to bigger things in life, careers. It puts them on a positive trajectory. And I'm the last guy, honestly, that should be singing its praises. I'm the father of two 20-year-old sons who had to endure several years of my swearing at them to get off of the computer game. And this conversion in my life and becoming an evangelist for this thing has made me apologize to my sons, because I think they've both captured great benefit. It's really helped their lives and their trajectories by being involved in esports. James, do you have anything to add in terms of why school leaders should care?
Man, I could go on and on about this for hours, and unfortunately I only have a brief 20-30 minutes to stand on my soapbox here. I got into this idea of games in school and gaming in school because I had a student who approached me at the high school and said, "Hey, Mr. Wood, I would like to start a gaming club." And I said, "Well, why do you want to start a gaming club?" This was the captain of the varsity football team, by the way. And he says, "Well, you know, I realize that I enjoy video games, but there's not a club that is for students who don't play football or baseball or who are into FFA." We were in a very rural school district, and they were talking about it. And that was what got me into this, was realizing that there is this whole world of competition out there that kids who may not be traditionally very athletic or physically capable of running a ball or throwing a ball or, you know, running across a field, there's this whole group of kids who don't have a good avenue for competition. And previously in, you know, earlier years, that might be, you know, the chess club would be the most competitive event that they could do or something like that. And so giving some of these kids a place to belong, I don't have the data on it right now, but I know that there's good data out there that kids who are participating in even one club or sport in high school are dramatically more likely to graduate. They're more likely to finish school. And even if they don't go on to do anything in that area, kids who have something that they can connect to become more likely to graduate. So it's going to help promote student success if you can even capture, you know, 20-30% of your population that are interested in these games. And there's all sorts of things in this ecosystem that are not just the kids that really enjoy playing those video games and who are very diehard into it. I had students of mine who worked on a TriCasting club where they were streaming football games. And you can translate that same streaming experience where you're putting together a production and editing videos and adjusting cameras and setting that up. You can translate that into scholarships. This student was offered a full-time job, I believe, I want to say at University of Washington, where the football team said, "Hey, if you apply here, we will give you a full-time job working to stream our games," just because of the work that the student did in high school. I had kids at the high school who said, "Well, I guess I got to come to school today. I was feeling, you know, I got to come to school today because I still want to be able to do esports practice." I've had another teacher in Orville who was telling me that she had a kid that she could not get to show up for extra tutoring at lunchtime. And she tried and tried with this kid. And as soon as we announced that esports invitational, because we were hosting it with, grade requirements. You have to still maintain same grades that you would for any other athletic endeavor. And she said that as soon as that was announced, this kid came in every single day working with her at lunchtime just to get his non-passing grade up to a D in whichever subject he was working on. And she was telling me that convinced her, and she's going to do everything she can to push for esports in her school and in her classroom. So there's all sorts of these, and I'm not the only one that's seen these stories. Those are a very few small examples just from local schools. A couple of questions that came up in the chat is how many teams or how many kids can, participate in this. I've had schools that, one of the schools that participates in our league, I think they had 6 active teams. And so they would play against multiple schools in a week, and they would have 3 kids per team, and they would all be on different consoles or on a computer. And so the game that most middle schools are using and that we'll be using is Rocket League, because it's free to play, but also because you can have 3 kids, so it's really easy to field a team of 3. The schools can mix and match between 6th to 8th grade students. You can have 2 6th graders and an 8th grader. We have schools that actually have like an A, B, and a C team where the kids have sort of competed amongst themselves to find out who gets to be on the, calling it a varsity squad versus a JV is the easiest comparison. You got A string, B string players in football. Why not have that in an esports team? Some schools like to have a 4th kid as an alternate in case a kid doesn't show up or can't make it. And
I want to pile on real quick on that. The team can be, of course, more than just those that are playing esports, as you've noted.
Absolutely.
I mean, the shoutcaster and the fan art creator and the strategist organizer, all of those are important team roles in your esports organization, and they may not necessarily be your best Rocket League player, but they still have an important role on the team.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the matches we had last year was actually streamed online, and the other school, they were probably 2-3 years ahead of us in actually starting an esports team with very few people to play, but they actually had kids sitting on an analyst desk where they were watching the game and casting it as if you were a sports announcer. And they had a list of talking points that they had put together about each of the schools and the game itself. And it was just amazing to see. And I'm looking at these kids thinking, these are 6th, 7th, 8th grade kids. These are kids that are 12, 13, 14 years old who are sitting down, making notes for an after-school club. They're typing up an outline, and then they're sitting there putting their face on camera, although everybody's going to be on camera this year. Pre-COVID, they'd sit down and they had it set up and they streamed this game like they were sportscasters. And granted, our team got absolutely demolished by one of their guys, darn icy, but it was fun. These kids loved it. And just being able to, we actually put that stream up in my classroom, and some of our kids' parents came in and sat in and watched it. They had no idea what was going on. They're like, why are there cars driving around? Did that car just explode? What's going on? But they loved it. And it was just so cool. The parents came to me and they're like, I am so happy to see my kid have a passion for something at school. Like they don't want to do any of the other clubs. They never wanted to play basketball. They never wanted to do this. I have not seen them this animated about school. So yeah, I'm going to support this. And, it only takes one. And, sometimes that's all it takes. We have a middle school class of last year, I think we had like 68 students, maybe 70. And the first time we hosted a meeting about kids interested in esports, I want to say that 20 of them were in my classroom at lunchtime to talk about it. With one of the question is, does Rocket League allow cross-console play yet? Yes, it does. I believe it has already done that in the past. And they use rocket tags for it. But we did have schools competing off of consoles against our schools on computers. And as far as will there be multiple seasons, we would love to do more than one sort of culminating event. And so most likely what we'll do is we'll do a fall season with an event probably in January, and then another one with an event probably in late May.
Yeah, let me pile on there too, James. So we've developed some relationships with the Sacramento Kings, and being able to use the Golden One Arena is in our sights, but everything has, planning-wise, been exacerbated, obviously, by the COVID pandemic. So when we round that corner, we'll revisit those ideas, but we are really enthusiastic about gathering our middle school peeps all together under one roof and having a big, mega tournament at some point in time.
Yeah, we would love to do that. And then even if the schools aren't local to the North State, we would love to have kids remote in for a tournament. That would be a fantastic experience. Just put a TV screen up with their whole team on Zoom together, just watching the competition. There's a lot of different ways that you can facilitate this, and I really enjoy it. And yes, your prospective coach or coaches should reach out to me for more info on the middle school. That was another question in the chat. So yeah, I think I got to most of those questions. So go ahead, Jerry.
Yeah, let me just go, let's see here. How can let's just talk about the next session. If you or any of your colleagues are interested, we're going to do an equitably deep dive this coming Wednesday, same bat time, same bat channel, and talk about the high school landscape with Kevin Brown from NASIF. And James knows Kevin very well. He is literally the guru of esports at NASIF, and is really a great guy to ask questions of. He can provide the same sort of common sense how-to orientation that James has provided in terms of getting started. And then here's our contact detail for James and I. We welcome any questions, reach outs. We're here to support you. The NCEL is here to support you. We've developed a number of unique solutions specifically for small schools, small and rural schools. They've been our largest, what do you want to call it, client or partner in this enterprise. So everything from coming up with novel solutions to overcome technology problems on your campus to, how to incentivize, teacher participation, because that's oftentimes very challenging on a small campus. What do you mean I've got one more extra duty assigned to me? So we've got some strategies on how to overcome some of those challenges as well. And then we have a punch list on how to answer some of those thorny questions that parents might hold about video game violence, gender and sexual glorifications, and some of those again thorny questions we have answers for. They're not perfect. We don't have not going to pretend that we have a solution to the gender thing that's prevalent in video games. But that said, we are a strong influence on changing the direction of that. Gaming companies are listening to the NCEL and NASIF, in terms of their design and its applicability to high school audiences. Let's see. I don't think I have anything else. James, do you have anything else to add?
Well, one of the questions that came up in the chat was, do we have a Hight video? I do not have a Hight video ready to go unless I can find one that was made by a colleague. But I do like to have my students watch an introductory, just the start of one of the professional esports events. And there's also the High School Esports League has done some really good promotional videos. And there's some stuff from NASIF as well. One of the best videos it's called Our Game, and it's by the League of Legends folks. And it covers a lot of these people who will, for lack of a better term, rag on video games and who will criticize them. Disrespect them.
Yeah.
And then as far as the NCEL website, that is something that we are still needing to work on updating. Most of what I ran last year, I ran a lot of it off of a Padlet of just resources for people, and then through just emails and spreadsheets to keep things coordinated.
BCOE has just recently renovated all of their websites, and the NCEL website attached to that wasn't first in line. rather last in line. So we should see some renovations to that website and some live links for you here shortly.
Yeah. I'll link that one in the chat as one that I really enjoyed watching. This is put out by the League of Legends company.
Yeah, I used that last week in our introduction to esports for soups and school leaders.
Well, if there's no you know, repeat offenders, and this is a good one to share.
No, it is. It's a great one. It's a great one.
I like that video particularly because I was watching many of those games that it shows clips of. I was watching those games, not live, but while they were happening, I was watching them, you know, from the comfort of my couch. So I actually was kind of watching that. It's kind of like watching a fun highlights reel of, you know, old World Series games for me.
Yeah, the interesting one in that is Rick Fox, the old Los Angeles Laker, makes an appearance on it talking positively about esports. And then go take a Google deep dive on Rick Fox now and see where he is in the esports world. He's actually one of the major influencers in esports right now. He's really taken a proactive role in promoting the sport. Well, Corey, I think that's the end of our presentation. That's all we have. Did you want to pick the ball up here? And
Sure. Well, yeah, it looks like all the questions have been answered. Thank you, Jerry and James. Thank you so much for putting on a great presentation today. If anybody has any questions for Jerry or James, I will be sending out a PDF of the presentation that you saw today. So their contact information will be in there. But if you have any trouble reaching them, you can always do it through me and I will get you in touch with them.
thank you, everybody. We look forward to having your teams as part of the NCEL, no matter where you're located.
Yeah, thank you. We're looking forward to having more teams this year, and I'm sure our schools that we had last year are going to love having an extra group of them. So yeah, just shoot us an email if you're interested, and then I think we'll, you know, get the info from Corey about who else was here, and maybe send out a, you know, quick group blast with extra info for you guys.
Sure. Yep, I can do that. And it looks like from what I'm seeing in the chat, it looks like quite a few people are interested in starting. So it sounds like you guys are going to be busy. So that's good.
Good.
Right. We don't need to sleep anyway.
Thank you guys so much. And thank you all for attending. And if you want to register for the high school event on Wednesday and you haven't yet, the Zoom link will be different. It won't be the Zoom link. So feel free to email me and I'll get you registered for that. Thank you again so much. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Right. Have a great day as well.
Bye-bye.
Carlos,